WNBPA will continue to negotiate in good faith. You better. Of course, the court of public opinion is going to be a mother on this. Striking is, quote, not something that we're going to do right this second, but we have in our back pocket. WNBA players, the WNBA won't lock out players, sources told CNBC. Bravo.
That's not just frustration in his voice. That's someone watching a golden opportunity slip away in real time. Because here's what's actually happening. The WNBA Players Association and the league just blew past their January 9th collective bargaining agreement deadline with no deal in sight. And the gap between what players want and what the league is offering, it's not a gap, it's a canyon. The stakes here are massive. We're talking about a league that just secured a media rights deal worth $240 million per year, 6 times what they were getting before, record viewership, sold-out arenas, and somehow the two sides can't agree on how to split the money.
Oh, let's be real now. Anybody that's playing women's basketball, even an average player at this point, probably can make $1.5 million a year. We don't want to hear that this ain't enough money. Now, obviously, I'm talking about you combine it with Unrivaled or you combine it with Project B, whatever. But under this new system, you're talking about $780,000 for an average player, and then, I don't know, go to Project B and probably make another $2 million. Hell, some of these players really and truly may end up making $3 million a year.
Let's break down the actual numbers, because this is where it gets wild. The league's current offer would take the average player salary from roughly $102,000 to $780,000 by the end of the new deal. That's not a cost of living adjustment. That's a 9 times increase. The maximum salary would jump from $249,000 to nearly $2 million. On paper, that sounds incredible. Life-changing money for athletes in a league that's never turned a profit in its 28-year history. But here's the central issue that's killing these negotiations. The players don't want a fixed salary increase. They want revenue sharing. They want a percentage of what the league brings in, just like NBA players get roughly 50% of basketball-related income. The problem, the WNBA isn't the NBA. Not even close. When you factor in the subsidies from NBA owners who've been propping up this league for nearly 3 decades, the actual financial picture looks very different than the public perception.
Our focus remains on reaching an agreement that significantly increases player compensation while ensuring long-term growth of the business, said a WNBA spokesperson in a statement. The spokesperson declined to provide specific league revenue figures for 2025. Now, Breonna Stewart came out and made comments about this. I didn't make a video yesterday because I covered it the day before yesterday. The comment she made in a video on a clip. The passing of the deadline will trigger a period of status quo in which the current CBA remains in place until either the league or the union reach a new deal or one side halts negotiations. Given the significant...
Now, here's where the league is playing this brilliantly from a public relations standpoint. They announced they won't lock out the players. Read that again. They're not going to prevent players from working. They're going to let the players make the decision to strike. Think about the optics of that. The league just offered to increase salaries by 900%. They've got $240 million in new TV money coming in. They're expanding to new markets. And if the players walk away from that, if they refuse to play while demanding revenue sharing in a league that's never made money, the court of public opinion is going to crucify them. And Adam Silver knows it. This is strategic patience at its finest. The league doesn't have to do anything aggressive. They just have to wait and let the Players Association explain to fans why a 9 times salary increase isn't good enough.
Though genuine compromise should be. For well over a year, WNBA players have publicly campaigned for more money given the rising popularity of the league and its stars. The NBA, which owns 42% of the WNBA, negotiated the league's most recent rights deal last year, leading to a 6-fold increase in annual TV revenue to roughly $200 million a year. It's actually about $240, I think, now. Quote, this is the biggest moment the WNBA's ever seen. WNBA superstar Caitlin Clark said last month, it's not something that can be messed up, and we're going to have to fight for everything we deserve. But at the same time, We need to play basketball.
But let's talk about what a strike would actually mean, because the timeline here, the WNBA season doesn't start until May. That gives both sides months to negotiate. But it also means something else. If this drags on, we're looking at a severely condensed off-season. Free agency gets delayed, training camps get shortened, teams can't properly prepare. And here's the nuclear option nobody's talking about yet. What happens if players actually strike once the season is supposed to start? You've got Caitlin Clark, the biggest draw in women's basketball history, sitting on the sidelines. You've got casual fans who just discovered the WNBA last season tuning in to find no games. You've got ESPN and other networks that just paid massive rights fees, staring at empty programming slots. The financial damage wouldn't just hit the players, it would crater the league's momentum at the exact moment they finally have mainstream attention. That's not a negotiating tactic, that's organizational suicide.
We'll just chill. By the way, they've been chilling all right. They didn't even counter the last offer. You know your offer's a joke when the entities that you make the offer to doesn't even acknowledge it. They took a look at that joker and was like, all right, they'll get the hint when they don't hear back from us.
Now watch what happens when you add another layer to this. Players aren't just negotiating for WNBA salaries anymore, they've got Unrivaled, the new 3-on-3 league. Offering significant money, they've got Project B on the horizon. The international leagues are still paying well. A top-tier WNBA player could realistically cobble together $1.5 to $3 million annually, even without the new CBA. So when the Players Association says they need revenue sharing to survive, that argument falls apart under scrutiny. These aren't desperate athletes with no options. They're professionals with multiple income streams who are demanding a percentage of revenue from a league that doesn't generate profit, and that's where the internal fractures are going to start showing, because not every player has those outside options.
How long do you think a strike's really going to last with all that new money on the table? And the infighting that could cause. Because you're talking about players that were playing last year in this league that made an average of what, $102,000 or something? That was like the average salary. Theoretically going up a lot under the CBA, and they're sitting back going, wait a minute. I'm going to blow hundreds of thousands of dollars this year? Is that what is that what we're trying to do? I've been trying to get coin in my pocket and I could get an extra $300K.
Here's the dirty secret about player strikes. They only work when everyone stays unified. In this situation, this is a powder keg waiting for a match. You've got veteran players who made an average of $102,000 last year looking at offers of $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 under the new CBA. That's generational wealth for athletes who've been grinding in obscurity for years. Now imagine the Players Association tells them, we're striking, you're going to walk away from an extra $300,000 to $400,000 this season because we want revenue sharing instead of fixed salaries. How long do you think that unity lasts? How many players are going to watch hundreds of thousands of dollars evaporate while they wait for a theoretical better deal? The answer is not many. And when the first player breaks ranks and says she wants to play under the league's offer, the whole thing collapses. That's not speculation, that's how every strike in sports history has ended, when the offer on the table is genuinely substantial.
It might as well have come and gone. The way they're talking, they're basically saying it's a wrap. And a deal won't be done. And the league is bracing for the possibility of eventual player strike. And it's crazy, because these players are considering a strike right now.
So let's talk about what happens next. Because this deadline passing doesn't mean immediate crisis. Under the current rules, when the CBA expires without a new agreement, you enter a status quo period. The old CBA stays in effect until either side reaches a deal or someone formally halts negotiations. That means players keep getting paid under the old salary structure. Games continue. Everything looks normal on the surface, but underneath, the pressure is building. Every day without a deal is another day. The league can point to the Players Association and say, we offered them $780,000 average salaries and they said no. Every interview where a player complains about money is another opportunity for fans to ask, wait, you turned down a 9-times raise, why? The Players Association Executive Director Terry Carmichael Jackson tried to flip the script. She put out a statement saying the league is using delay as a pressure tactic, that they're not showing up with genuine compromise. But that messaging isn't landing, because when you look at the actual numbers, a 9-times salary increase sure looks like compromise. What the players want is fundamentally different. They want to be treated like partners who share in the upside when the league does well. That's not unreasonable in theory. NBA players have that. NFL players have that, but those leagues are profitable. Those leagues have proven business models. The WNBA is asking for investment capital to keep operating. Here's where it gets complicated. The new TV deal is real money. $240 million per year is a massive jump, but TV rights are just one revenue stream. You've got to factor in arena costs, travel, salaries for coaches and staff, marketing, player development, and about 100 other expenses that don't show up in the headlines. When you run those numbers, the league's argument that they can't afford revenue sharing starts making sense, and that's before you consider what revenue sharing would actually mean in practice. Let's say the league agrees to give players 50% of basketball-related income, just like the NBA. Sounds fair, right? Except in a year where the league loses money, what happens? Do players give money back? Do they accept salary cuts? Because that's how revenue sharing works. You share the wins and the losses. NBA players can handle that volatility, because the league consistently generates billions in profit. WNBA players would be signing up for a roller coaster where their income could drop significantly if the league has a bad year. The fixed salary model the league is offering actually provides more stability and security, even if it doesn't have the same upside potential. But stability doesn't generate headlines. Revenue sharing does, and that's what's driving this impasse. Breanna Stewart came out and made comments about this situation, and you could hear the frustration. She's one of the faces of the league. She's got endorsements and international opportunities, but she's also trying to represent players who don't have those options, who are depending on WNBA salaries as their primary income. That's a nearly impossible position to navigate. Because here's the reality, what's good for Breanna Stewart might not be good for the player making league minimum. Stewart can afford to strike. She can sit out a season and barely feel it financially. But the player who was counting on that $300,000 salary increase, she can't. And when those competing interests collide, unions fracture. Adam Silver understands this. He's been through NBA negotiations. He knows how to wait out a players' association until the internal pressure becomes unbearable. And by refusing to lock out players, by positioning the league as the reasonable party that wants to play basketball and pay increased salaries, he's put the Players Association in an impossible PR situation. If they strike, they're the bad guys who walked away from record salaries. If they accept the deal, they're admitting they couldn't get revenue sharing. Either way, the league wins the narrative. The only path forward that makes sense is continued negotiation. Find a middle ground. Maybe it's a hybrid model where players get fixed salaries plus a small percentage of revenue above certain thresholds. Maybe it's performance bonuses tied to viewership or attendance. Maybe it's additional revenue sharing that kicks in once the league achieves sustained profitability. But that requires both sides to compromise. And right now, neither side is blinking. Caitlin Clark said it best, "This is the biggest moment the WNBA has ever seen. It's not something that can be messed up." She's right. This league has spent 28 years trying to break through to mainstream relevance. Last season they finally did it. Record viewership, sold-out arenas, cultural momentum, and now they're risking all of that over a negotiation that should have been resolved months ago. The players deserve to be paid well. Nobody's arguing against that. But they also need to recognize the financial reality of the league they're playing in. This isn't the NBA. The infrastructure isn't there yet. The consistent profitability isn't there yet. And demanding NBA-style revenue sharing before the league has NBA-style revenue is putting the cart before the horse. So where does this end? Most likely with a deal that gives players significant salary increases, maybe some limited revenue sharing tied to specific benchmarks, and language that allows for renegotiation if the league hits certain financial targets. Both sides will claim victory. Both sides will compromise on something they didn't want to give up, but the damage to the league's momentum, that might already be done. Because every day this plays out in public is another day casual fans are reminded that the WNBA still hasn't figured out how to be a sustainable business. And that's not the story you want to tell when you're trying to convince people this league has finally arrived. The question isn't whether players deserve more money. They do. The question is whether demanding revenue sharing right now in this moment with this financial structure is worth potentially destroying the best opportunity this league has ever had. Tell me what you think in the comments.